Hello, welcome to another video from the Animal University channel. Let's go for the video. Crow. Crow, genus Corvus, any of various glossy blackbirds found in most parts of the world, with the exception of southern South America. Crows are generally smaller and not as thick-billed as ravens, which belong to the same genus. A large majority of the 40 or so Corvus species are known as crows, and the name has been applied to other, unrelated birds. Large crows measure about 0.5 meter, 20 inches, long, with wingspans that can reach 1 meter, 39 inches. Crows feed chiefly on the ground, where they walk about purposefully. They are omnivores that enjoy meat and may even attack and kill young, weak animals. This habit makes them unpopular with farmers, as does the bird's propensity to raid grain crops. Berries, insects, the eggs of other birds, and carrion are also eaten. Crows will make off with shreds of roadkill and store tidbits in trees, caching the meat like a leopard does for later consumption. Sometimes they bury seeds or store them in crevices in bark. They occasionally steal food from other animals, sometimes cooperating with other crows to raid food from otters, vultures, and water birds. Crows live in large, close-knit families, and, like social mammals, they not only hunt and forage together but also defend territories and care for the young together. Most species, however, do not nest in colonies. Each mating pair has its own nest of sticks and twigs, usually high up in a tree. There are laid 5 or 6 greenish to olive eggs, with darker speckles. Young crows may spend up to 6 years with their parents before breeding on their own. As winter approaches, northern crows gather into large night roosting groups. These flocks can include tens of thousands of birds and occasionally hundreds of thousands. Possible reasons for this seasonal gregariousness are warmth, protection against predators such as owls, or information exchange. A crow may live 13 years in the wild and more than 20 years in captivity. Highly intelligent, crows can be masterful mimics. They have been trained to count aloud up to 7, and some crows have learned more than 100 words and up to 50 complete sentences. Others have been known to mimic their owners' voices in order to call dogs and taunt horses. They also exhibit great curiosity, fueling a reputation as inventive pranksters and calculating thieves. They fly off with people's mail, pull clothespins off lines, and make off with unattended objects such as car keys. 2 species, the New Caledonian crow, C. moneguloides, and the Alala, or Hawaiian crow, C. hawaiiensis, use stick-type foraging tools to obtain food from small holes and crevices. Such sophisticated tool use is only practiced by a handful of animal species. Some common crows are the American crow, C. brachyrhynchos, of North America, and the carrion crow, C. couronne, of Europe and most of Asia. A subspecies of the carrion crow with gray on the back of the neck and breast is called the hooded crow, C. couronne cornix. Sometimes considered a separate species, it is found between Western Europe and Eastern Asia and in the northern British Isles. Other crows include the house crow, C. splendens, of the Indian subcontinent, introduced in eastern Africa, the pied crow, C. albus, with white nape and breast, of tropical Africa, and the fish crow, C. ossifragus, of southeastern and central North America. Other members of the genus Corvus not called crows are the raven, jackdaw, and rook. For birds in other families that are sometimes called crows, see currawong, or piping crow, drongo, or king crow, kakako, or wattled crow, and rockfowl, or bald crow. When a crow dies, its neighbors may have a funeral. The sight of a dead crow tends to attract a mob of 100 or more live ones. During this ritual, the live crows almost never touch the dead one, which rules scavenging out as a motive. Why do they do this? Some studies suggest that the mass gathering is part of a survival strategy. The birds are learning about threats and seem hesitant to revisit any spot where they've encountered a dead crow, even if food is plentiful there. Crows have caused blackouts in Japan. Since the 1990s, crows have experienced a population boom in Japan, where, not coincidentally, delicious garbage is more plentiful than ever before. This is bad news for power companies. Urban crows like to nest on electric transformers and will often use wire hangers or fiber optic cables as building materials for their nests. The result was an epidemic of crow-caused blackouts in major cities around Japan. Between 2006 and 2008, the corvids stole almost 1,400 fiber optic cables from Tokyo power providers, and according to the Chubu Electric Company, crows are responsible for around 100 power failures per year in their facilities alone. To fight back, Chubu started installing artificial love nests in 2004. Made with non-conductive resin, the nests are placed on company towers high above the power lines, where the birds are unlikely to cause any trouble. The strategy seems to be working. 67% of the phone nests are currently in use, making life a lot easier for Chubu employees. Some crows can read traffic lights. In Japan, carrion crows, Corvus caron, use cars like oversized nutcrackers. The birds have learned to take walnuts, a favorite treat, over to road intersections, where they put the hard-shelled snacks down onto the pavement. The crow then waits for a passing vehicle to smash the nut, after which it will swoop down and eat the delicious interior. It's a risky trick, but the crows aren't usually run over because, unlike some people, they've figured out what traffic lights mean. Carrion crows wait until the light turns red before flying down to place the uncracked nut on the road. The second the light goes green, the crow takes off to watch the nut get run over from afar. It will even wait for the next red to scoop up the nut's insides. This behavior isn't limited to just one corvid species. American crows have been observed doing the same thing in California. You can call a group of crows a murder, but some scientists would rather you didn't. According to the Oxford English Dictionary, OED, the correct term for a group of crows is a murder, an expression birdwatchers and poets have been using since at least the 15th century, which the OED speculates may allude to the crow's traditional association with violent death, or to its harsh and raucous cry. But maybe it's time to come up with a replacement. McGowan hates the phrase murder of crows. To him, it only feeds the public's negative outlook on the animals. These birds aren't a gang of nasty villains, he wrote in the book Birdology. These birds are just birds. McGowan would also have you know that American crows rank among the most family-oriented birds in the world. Crows can recognize your face and hold a grudge. You don't want a crow for an enemy. In 2011, a team from the University of Washington published a remarkable study about the brainpower of local crows. The researchers' goal was to figure out how well the birds could identify human faces. So, in the name of science, they went out and bought 2 Halloween masks. One resembled a caveman, the other looked like Dick Cheney. It was decided that the caveman getup would be used to threaten the birds, while the Cheney mask was relegated to control status. At the 5 sites, a scientist donned the caveman mask before catching and banding some wild crows. Getting trapped is never a fun experience, and upon their release, the ex-captives loudly scolded their assailant with a threatening caw. Seeing this, other birds who had been sitting nearby joined in the fray, swooping down to harass the Neanderthalic visitor. Over a period of several years, both masks were regularly worn by team members on strolls through all 5 test spots. Without fail, the caveman mask was greeted by angry scolds and dive bomb attacks from crows, including many who'd never been captured or banded, while the birds largely ignored the Dick Cheney mask. Amazingly, the caveman disguise continued to provoke a hostile response 5 years into the experiment, even though the team had stopped trapping crows after those first few site visits. And some of the birds who antagonized the mask wearer weren't even alive back when the whole thing started. The younger crows couldn't possibly have seen the imitation caveman grab an acquaintance of theirs, but they scolded it anyway. Clearly, the grudge had been passed on. Birds were still attacking the mask as recently as 2013. The moral of this story? Mind your manners around crows. Because if you mistreat them, they won't forget you, and neither will their friends or the next generation. I hope you enjoyed this video enough and it was informative. Please like the video and subscribe the channel. Introduce us to your friends. Good luck to you all.